to Sikishan Sharada College YouTube channel. Myself, Dr. Pinak Pani Nath Choudhury, Assistant Professor, Department of Zoology, SS College, Hailakandi. Dear student, actually due to COVID-19 pandemic, we are unable to start the normal teaching learning process that is what is called the classroom teaching. So we have to take this YouTube channel method through which we can reach you and we can deliver the video lecture, and accordingly we are trying to deliver the notes through the online portal of Sri Krishna Sharada College. So today's topic is organisms and population, which is chapter 13 of your textbook. To study that particular chapter, first we have to learn what is ecology. Actually, ecology is the branch of science that studies the relationship between organisms and their physical and biological environment. Only if the environment is suitable for the set of organisms, they generally grow and reproduce there. Uh, in an ecosystem, we are having different levels of organization. First one is organisms. So what is organisms? Organisms is the every individual of a species in a particular given area. Next level of organization comes the population. So populations are the individuals of the same species at a given place. Now question arises, what is species? Species is the group of individuals which can interbreed among themselves, are generally termed as the species. Next level of organization is the communities. So actually communities are the assembly of population of different species living in an area and interacting among themselves are the communities. Next level of organizations is the biomes. Actually, biomes are large unit of flora and fauna in a specific climatic zone. Biomes are biogeographical realms made up of whole continent or part of it separated by major geographical barriers and are characterized by the presence of certain unique plants, animals and other forms of life. Actually, we are having different biomes in the earth surface based on the different parameters like amount of rainfall, temperature, etc. Based on these factors or these parameters, we are having tropical rainforest biomes, deciduous forest biomes, evergreen forest biomes, grassland biomes, desert biomes, and marine biomes. Actually, the area where rainfall is very limited or very less are desert, and where the rainfall is high, these are evergreen forest or grassland. Next comes the definition of environment. Sum of all biotic and abiotic factors that surround and influences an organism in its survival and reproduction is termed as the environment. And we are having different types of environmental factors which generally affects the biota or organisms in the on the earth. We are having generally two types of environmental factor. One is biotic factor and the other one is abiotic factor. So question may comes that what are biotic factors? The biotic components of the ecosystem includes the producers, that is all green plants, the consumers, that is all animals, parasites, etc., uh, and the decomposers. All organisms which use generally dead organic matter are the biotic component of the ecosystem. There are also intermediate groups such as symbionts, partial carnivores, etc. All these organisms live together in a community. Not only they interact among themselves and influence each other, but they also influence the abiotic components. Some biotic factors like competition, predation, parasitism, etc. are the factors which generally affects the growth and development of other organisms. So they are the biotic factor. And next factor is Abiotic factor. Abiotic factors includes the rotation of Earth. As you know, the rotation of due to the rotation of Earth, day and night occurs, and also you know that some animals or plants prefer daytime. On the other hand, some animals and plants prefer generally the night time. Some flowers are there. Generally, they flowering occurs during night time, and some plants are the flowers of plants are generally flowering occurs in the daytime. On the other hand, some animals generally come out from their nest during the night time, and some animals generally move around during the daytime. For example, human beings generally prefer the daytime for their movement. So rotation of Earth is also influencing the movement and growth of organisms. Next is seasonal and annual variation in temperature and precipitation. For example, during summer season, we find certain types of fruits. During winter season, also we find certain types of vegetables. So these actually these occur due to the seasonal and annual variation in temperature and precipitation and environmental, of course, environmental condition. So, for example, mango we generally find during the rainy season or the hot during the hot summer, but we generally do not find the mango in the winter season. On the other hand, we generally find the cauliflower like vegetables in the winter season, but these vegetables are not abundant during the rainy or summer seasons. So these are seasonal and annual variation is affecting the vegetation and definitely the animal population. So they are abiotic factors. Other major abiotic factors are temperature, water, light, soil, etc. So temperature influences the biological activities by influencing the physiological functions of the organisms. The organisms are affected by the change of temperature. Activity in plants are confined between the maximum and the minimum required temperature. Each plant requires a certain number of heat units before it can produce flower. It is one of the most important factor. Temperature decreases progressively from equator towards both the poles and from plains to mountain tips. Organisms survive only in suitable range of temperature. Again, for different types of organisms, the range of suitable temperature also different. For example, we generally find penguin, krill, etc. in the southern pole, but we generally find the polar bear in the northern pole. On the other hand, human being and other organisms are generally found in the equatorial region of the earth. Based on the tolerance of temperature, we can differentiate the organism into two parts. One are termed as eurythermal organism, and the other one is the stenothermal organism. Eurythermal organisms are the organisms which can tolerate a wide range of temperature. For example, some archaebacteria or other organism which can generally tolerate a wide range of temperature. On the other hand, stenothermal organisms are those which can tolerate only a narrow range of temperature, and in extreme range of temperature either they die or they generally migrate from that place. So temperature is one of the most important abiotic factor for the growth and development of organism. Next comes the water. We know life originates in water, and it is one of the other important abiotic factor. Without water, we cannot think of life. Productivity and distribution of plants also depends on water. Actually, on Earth's surface, we generally find two different types of aquatic environment. One is freshwater aquatic environment, and the other one is the saline water, that is the marine aquatic environment. In the picture, you can see that the picture of a river. That means it is the freshwater ecosystem, and another one is the seawater, that is the marine water ecosystem. Based on the tolerance of salinity, again we can differentiate the aquatic organism into two different types. One is euryhaline organism, the organism that can tolerate wide range of salinity. For example, Ilsha hilisha, a fish loved by every Bengali. It is a brackish water fish and generally it lives in moderate saline water, not in extreme but in moderate saline water where the river water and sea water mixes. But what happens during their breeding season? They lay their egg in the freshwater environment. So they have to come to the river or freshwater ecosystem for discharging their eggs. So they have to tolerate the fresh water and side by side they have to tolerate the salinity of sea. Though not to extreme condition, but some sorts of salinity they have to tolerate. So they are having a salinity tolerance. On the other hand, Labioruhita, it is a freshwater fish. It cannot survive in saline water. So they are stenohaline organisms. Freshwater animals cannot live in seawater and vice versa because the osmotic problem. Another important abiotic factor is light. We know sunlight is the sole source of energy and sunlight is very much required for photosynthesis. Here is a picture where light, carbon dioxide and water in presence in a plant leaf actually produces the carbohydrate and oxygen. Again, oxygen is required by the animal for their survival. Small plants adapted to photosynthesis at low light condition. On the other hand, flowering of different plants also depend on sunlight. Maybe some plants prefer the presence of sunlight, some plants prefer less amount of sunlight, some plants actually prefer the night time for their flowering. So light is one of the important abiotic factor which generally influence the environment or the development and growth of organism. Next comes the soil. Soil is another most important abiotic component. It is the source of all inorganic compounds essential for life. Plant absorbs all such compounds and build up food for all other organisms. Soil is not only the habitat of plants and organisms, a large number of microorganisms also live in the soil. Microorganisms which live in soil space not only mineralize the organic matter but also solubilize the inorganic compounds so that plants can absorb them. Quality of the soil depends upon various factors such as particle size of the soil, presence of air and water retaining capacity, temperature, acidity, alkalinity of the soil, etc. This picture shows the different types of soil generally found in this locality. One is sand. In sand water, sandy soil are actually porous and they could not retain water. Next one is silt, and third one is clay, which can retain maximum water. And generally, the farmers prefers this clay soil for their vegetation. And other abiotic factors which are actually important for the growth and development of an ecosystem, the important one is wind determines weather condition and thus affects plants and animal life. Wind also determines the rule of transpiration in plants. Plants with strong roots and stems can withstand high wind velocity. Therefore, in high altitude area and in low coastal region, the plants have strong root system and the tensile strength provided by the mechanical tissue of the stem is high. Next important abiotic factor is the pH. pH is the negative logarithm of hydrogen ion concentration. All organisms have specific requirement of pH. Some prefer acidic condition and some prefer neutral or alkaline condition of the media. Next comes the minerals. Actually, all organisms have specific requirement of minerals which the plant and microbes draw from environment. Consumers draw these minerals from plants or from other animals or environment. Soil minerals determine the type and the vigor of the plant community in an ecosystem. Next comes the salinity. Plants growing in saline soil have special adaptation for removal of excess salt, root respiration, seed germination, etc. Plants growing in waterlogged areas similarly have specific adaptation. All types of plants cannot grow in such situation. Next comes the topography. Altitude, slope, depression, and other physical feature of the earth influences plants as well as animals. Topography directly influences the factors such as wind, rainfall, temperature, light, shade, etc. These factors influence organisms in various ways. For this reason, we find some differences in plant community in high mountain and plain, in slope and in plain area, in northern slope and in southern slope of a mountain. For example, here is a picture which which is showing that the vegetation is different in the lower part of the mountain and the part of the mountain, and the vegetation, there is a distinct gradation of vegetation with the altitude of that particular mountain. Next comes how organisms respond to these abiotic factors. The first one is the regulation. Uh, Some organisms maintain homeostasis by physiological means which help maintaining constant body temperature and ideal osmotic concentration of body fluid. Birds, mammals, and certain lower vertebrates and invertebrates possess this capacity. Because of the ability to maintain perfect homeostasis, mammals are the most successful organisms today. They may live either in equatorial region or in polar region, but their body temperature is always maintained at 37 degrees centigrade or 97 degree Fahrenheit. Plants do not possess such homeostatic mechanism. Next comes the conformation. Some uh, organisms change their body temperature with the surrounding. A majority of animal and plants do not possess the capacity to regulate their body temperature when outside temperature is very high or very low. They change their body temperature with the ambient surrounding temperature. For example, fishes, when surrounded by water that possesses different concentration, they adjust the osmotic concentration of their body fluid to that of the ambient osmotic concentration of water. Plants also try to adjust its internal environment with that of ambient environment. All such animals and plants are conformers. Next comes the migration. Those which are not conformer and those which cannot regulate generally migrate to other places. One important example of migration is during the lockdown of COVID-19, the workers who were actually working in different companies or factories in different cities try to move their hometown due to the lockdown of this particular that particular company or the machinery. They actually that was the unfavorable condition for the survival of these workers, so they generally prefer their hometown or home village, which is a much more preferable place for their living. So this is one, and they started migrating from their place of work to their hometown. This is one example of migration. Different birds and different other organisms are there. They generally migrate due to the unfavorable condition during the different season of the year. Next one is suspension. Some kinds of organisms suspend their metabolic activity in extreme conditions and regain the same with the onset of favorable condition. In bacteria, fungi, and lower plants, some thick-walled spores develop to withstand the adverse condition. These spores germinate with the arrival of suitable condition. In higher plants, seeds remain in dormant condition and germinate when suitable moisture and temperature become available. Similarly, vegetatively reproducing plants produce bulbs which help uh, pollination to tide over the unfavorable condition. So these are the way through which generally organisms respond to abiotic factor. Next comes the adaptation. Adaptation are modification of behavior, morphology, and physiology of organisms to adjust to a given circumstances. Only those organisms which can adjust certain environment through appropriate changes of their behavior, morphology, and physiology are selected by nature as fit to survive. Actually, one theory is there in the ecology, that is survival of the fittest. The fittest organism can survive and the unfit organism will generally extinct from the environment. For example, during the Jurassic period, actually that period was dominated by different types of crocodile like dinosaurs, and as they cannot adjust themselves with the changing environment, nowadays they are extinct from the environment. So adaptation is important for the survival of organism, and adaptation is generally found both in plants and animals. For example, you can find there is a picture of camel can drink water and can retain the water for at least a month, as because they are generally found in desert area where water scarcity is there. On the other hand, cactus, which these plants are also found in the desert area where water scarcity and there water scarcity are there, and due to that reason they generally they are modified their leaves into thorn to prevent the water loss through transpiration. As because you know transpiration occurs through the leaf surface, and they actually producing this thorn, they generally reduce their surface area, and thereby they are reducing the transpiration, and thereby they retain the water inside their body. So this is another important example of plant adaptation. Next question come, what is population? Actually, population is an assemblage of homogeneous interbreeding individuals occupying a geographical location, interacting among themselves and with others in the habitat, forming an ecological unit. For example, lotus plant in a pond, bacteria in a culture plate. We can define the population density by number of individual present per unit area at a given time, and the population growth can be explained with the help of two models. One is exponential growth model and the second one is logistic growth model. And in exponential growth model, when food is abundant and there is enough space for growth and predators are less and weather is favorable, the population actually grows exponentially. The first graph, that is the Z-short type of graph, actually represent the exponential growth, and it is not the exponential growth curve. On the other hand, any population cannot grow actually exponentially because some limiting factor act to restrict the continuous exponential growth. This may be due to limitation of food and space, which leads to competition among them. The growth leads to accumulation of toxin byproducts, which also affect further growth. Any habitat has enough resources to support only a limited number of population, beyond which it cannot support any added number of population. This limit is called carrying capacity for a particular population. So, after reaching the carrying capacity of a particular environment, the growth generally decreases and the growth curve takes the shape of an S. So, S curve shaped growth is generally termed as the logistic growth. One more important topic in this chapter is the population interaction. Actually, the interaction between different population are termed as population interaction. We generally find two types of population interaction. One is intraspecific interaction, where the individuals of each population interact or among themselves, and this is the intraspecific interaction. On the other hand, the second one is interspecific interaction, where the interaction of population of two different species actually takes place in this. We are having different types of interaction. One is mutualism. Mutualism is the interaction between species in which both the species are benefited, and it is called the mutualism. For the example of mutualism is lichen. It is the interaction between lichen and fungus and alga, and where both derive benefit. For example, here the species A is, for example, the fungus, and species B is the alga, and both the specimen both the species actually derive benefit out of this interaction. That is the mutualism. It is a positive population interaction. Second one is competition. Competition for some type of food or some habitat may occur among individuals of the same or different species. It is not true that competition occur among closely related species. Competition also occur among unrelated species, because completely unrelated species may share the same food. Again, when there is enough food, the feeding efficiency of one species may be reduced due to interference by other species. So this is the competition, where actually both the participating species are harmed, and none can derive benefit out of this interaction. Third one is predation. It is an interspecific interaction where one animal which is strong and carnivore in nature kills another animal which is weak. The killer is called the predator, and the killed one is called the prey. Predator and prey are not always animals. Herbivores are predator of plants. Among plants also there are predators. The insectivorous plants like pitcher plants are predator of insects. In this case, the insects are prey. So in predation, what happened? Actually, species A derive benefit at the cost of species B, and species B is brutally murdered. That is, it is harmed. Third one is parasitism. Parasitism is a specific interaction in which one partner derives benefit at the expense of the other. In their case, the host is affected or killed. In such case, interaction of the following factor are evident. In all such association, parasite is benefited and the host is affected or killed. Interaction is specific for the host and the parasite. This means specific parasite have specific host range. This is another type of negative population interaction, where one species derive benefit and the other species is harmed. Next comes the commensalism. It is an interaction between two species in which one species is benefited but the other interacting species neither benefited nor it is harmed by such interaction. Commensalism may also be called as a table together. It means one consumes the unused food of the other. The following example may be cited: orchid or any other epiphyte grow on tree trunk without harming the plants. So here this is one source of positive interaction, where one species derives the benefit but it does not harm the other participating species. Next one is amensalism. It is an interaction in which one species causes harms to another without gaining any benefit. The adversely affected species is called amensal and the affecting species is called inhibitor. For example, some microorganisms, actually microorganisms secrete some antibiotics that affects the growth of other organisms. This phenomenon is called antibiosis. Thus, the actually the first one is not harmed, but the second one is harmed. but the first one is also not deriving any benefit. So this source of interaction is called commensalism. So these are the main points of this particular chapter, that gives organisms and populations. Thank you for watching the video.